Hey again, it's Megan. And if for those of you that don't know me, I'm a licensed therapist and a self-care and wellness coach. So each week I come on here and I bring you helpful tips that you can do to take better care of yourself from the inside out. So don't forget to subscribe by hitting the button below so you can be informed when I come on each week and you won't miss out on anything. So, today I'm going to talk about how to say no and still feel good about yourself when doing it. So, to do it with confidence, okay? And I'm also going to do a post about this. And so I will put that in the notes below. I'll put a link to the notes, okay? So, I know the whole saying no thing can be really tough. I understand that from personal experience. I get it. Okay. That's why it's something I really want to talk about with you. So sometimes we say, someone asks us a question and we want to say no, but we just don't. And so inside we're like screaming, like, no, I really don't want to do this, or I really don't want to go to something, but we end up saying yes. It's almost like our mouth and our minds are doing two different things. Okay. And so that's why I want to talk to you about that today. Have you ever walked off from a situation after you told someone yes to something and you're like, why in the world did I do that? I don't know why I did that. And then you kind of feel like you can't go backwards because you've already told them yes and you don't want to go back on your word. Okay. So today I'm going to talk about 7 tips to saying no. Before we begin, I want to briefly talk about the reasons it's hard for people to say no. Now, I actually did another video about this, and I have a post, and it's called How to Set Boundaries and Gain Respect at the Same Time. Okay, so if you haven't seen that video or read that blog post, go and read that after this one. Okay, and so because that's also a really good one. These all go hand in hand, and they are all related to self care. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly run over the reasons that we may have trouble saying no. The first one is having low self esteem. The second one is we're afraid to mess up a relationship or a friendship that we have. We're afraid if we say no, then they're not going to ask us to come back out, and do something with us, or they just won't want to be our friends at all any longer. We're afraid of what the other person may think about us. So we're already having our minds that maybe they'll think I'm not dependable if I don't go with them or if I say no. And then I also mentioned already the fear of not getting invited to things in the future. The likelihood of it is very small. If they ask you to go to something a couple times and you say no, then that doesn't mean they're not going to invite you again, especially if you explain to them beforehand, which I'll get into in just a few minutes about, maybe I'm just not able to go for this time. Okay. So those are the 4 ways or 4 reasons that we typically are kind of shy about saying no. Now I'm going to talk about the 7 ways you can say no and do it with confidence. So the very first one is self-esteem. You hear me say self-esteem over and over again, and the reason I talk a lot about this is because this is where it comes from. This is where it starts. When you feel good about yourself and you're confident in who you are, you're more likely to say what it is that you want. You're more likely to put yourself first and realize that it's not you being selfish. Okay. So if people are struggling with setting boundaries, saying no, I usually recommend that they do some soul searching and look and see if they're having some issues with self esteem. That's a huge topic. You'll hear me say that often because it is. And you need to chew off a little bit at a time. It's not something that you need to try to do all in one day because it's not going to work. Typically, self esteem has gotten low over time. It didn't just happen one day. Okay. So it took you time to get to this low place. It's going to take you time to get out of it as well. So, self esteem is the first one. Work on that. The second one is work it like a muscle. And what I mean by that is saying no is like a skill. You have to practice it. You have to become comfortable and it needs to become familiar to you. It's going to feel really awkward at first, especially if someone's just sitting there looking at you like you have 5 heads when you say, no, I'm not going to go, or no, I can't do that. They may try to make you feel uncomfortable. They're the one that's probably uncomfortable, but it can be kind of this awkward space. And so you need to practice it. I recommend you do it in front of the mirror because because you can kind of get used to it, or do it with a trusted friend and have them give you some pushback. What I mean by that is have them say to you how it would typically work in a real life situation. So if, they ask you to something and then you say no and they say, well, why not? That's something that could really happen. So kind of do like a role play situation. They give you a real life scenario, and so you know how to react to that. It can be hard to be quick on our toes, but if you're already prepared for it a little bit, we can't be prepared for everything, of course. But if you're a little prepared for it, then it will ease the tension and you'll feel a little more comfortable and less anxious. All right. And number 3, be consistent. Okay. You need to, if you're going to say you're not going to go to something and you've told them that you're going to do this, for the rest of the year until the end of this year, then you need to be consistent about that. Otherwise, you look wishy-washy. And I know that's not something you want to look like. We talked about earlier about you don't want to be seen a certain way. Then you need to show people what what you mean and be able to assert yourself. So be consistent, and then people will know what to expect from you. That brings me to my next one, which is making your actions match your words. So say what you mean and mean what you say. Meaning, if you tell them you are not going to be coming to something, an event, or you're not going to volunteer for something, then don't turn around and then show up anyway. That's a good way for people to not respect you, and it sends a message that you don't respect yourself, and you really do look like that you're not able, you're not able to follow through with what you said. And so it's confusing to people. It sends mixed messages. So you want to be clear with yourself and you want to be clear with other people. And so if you say you're not going to show up to something, then don't, and follow through with that. A lot of times when we're uncomfortable with things, we'll say, well, I'm not going to go, but then we go home, we kind of feel bad about it, and then we turn around and we go anyway, okay? And they're like surprised to see us. But a lot of the times we go back on our word because we felt uncomfortable, and so we chose to go back on what we've said. So you'll have to sit in that uncomfortable feeling. It will pass eventually. It's hard and it feels like it's not going to pass, but it will. Distract yourself, do things during that time if you want to, that you would typically be volunteering or going out, okay? So we're on the 5th one. The 5th way is to communicate with people. You have to communicate. That's a lot of the reason why we have issues that we do, arguments, misunderstandings, is because we don't have effective communication. People cannot read your mind. They need to know if you're not going to be able to go to something. Don't just not show up. Just communicate it with them. I know sometimes, you may want to try to get out of a difficult conversation. It may feel kind of weird, and so you think, well, I'm just not going to address it at all. That makes the situation worse. So communicate and be direct when you do. Don't go around the bush, don't hint at it, be very direct. Number 6, set expectations. You've heard, I'm sure you guys, well, maybe you haven't heard this story, but last year I was totally overworking myself, and it wasn't anyone else's fault but mine, because I was not setting expectations and I was not teaching people how to treat me. And then I was like totally frazzled, right? So I decided last year that I was not going to do half of the stuff I, am doing, and I would be very intentional about what I do this year. So starting last year, when I knew that, I told people that already, so they knew what to expect from me. Now, of course, some of them understood and they were very supportive, and others weren't so much, and that's okay. But for those that did come back and try to ask me, hey, I would give them a gentle reminder. Remember when I said last year I wasn't going to be a part of this any longer? And then that's it. And so now they know. And so you set that expectation well in advance, then people know what to expect from you. They may come back around and say something and question you again, then you just gently remind them that you've already explained that you're not going to do such and such. Okay? And one thing, there was an article that I was reading. This is not, this is in the blog post, but it was really good talking about saying no. And one of the things that this author said was, her name was Kristen Wong. She said that instead of saying I can't, say I don't do such and such. Because at that point, it's not really up for debate. There's not much, if I say I can't, we could kind of go back and forth about why I can't. But if I have a firm I don't, like for example, I don't go out to happy hour during the week. That's not true. But let's say it was, then that's something that's in line with my values, okay? And so for them, someone's probably not going to ask, well, why don't you go out? They could. Then I just repeat, I don't go out. It's something that I don't do, okay? So I thought that was a really good point. Instead of saying I can't, saying I don't. The last way to say no with confidence is to stop over explaining yourself. Context, so don't expect him to look at the camera. So the last one is to stop over explaining yourself. This is hard, I know, because we feel the need to explain why we can't do something, why we can't go. It all goes back to how we're being viewed. We don't want to be judged. We don't want to disappoint people. We don't want to let them down. But it ends up getting you in a predicament you might not want to be in. For example, if someone asks you to go somewhere and you really just want to go home and not do anything, what would you say? So what happens is we end up over explaining, saying, well, I'm really tired and I just got off work and I normally, and then we start going down this rabbit hole of excuses. And what happens is that we may end up lying because it's not the truth. When we really just want to go home and binge watch Netflix all evening, which there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to have an excuse. You don't have to have a reason that you don't want to do something. It could be you just don't want to. So to handle that, the best way is to be honest and just say, not tonight. Or you can say, not tonight. However, I would love to go with you on Saturday. How does that sound? And so then the person can decide from there whether they'd like to or not. Okay. But that way you're not lying, you're telling the truth, and you don't have to try to think about what you told them later on when you see them. So don't forget to subscribe below. And thank you so much for listening. And that's all the tips I have for the 7 ways to communicate no and still do it with confidence. See you next time.